Hall of Fame quarterback Brett Favre has just filed 3 separate lawsuits against Shannon Sharpe, the Hall of Fame tight end and co-host of my favorite sports show, Undisputed, Pat McAfee, college game day commentator and host of the Pat McAfee Show, and Shad White, the Mississippi State auditor who has publicly accused Brett Favre of welfare fraud. In this video, you're going to learn everything you need to know about Brett Favre's defamation lawsuits. We'll look at the complaint that Favre has just filed against Shad White, and we'll talk about the other 2 defamation cases as well. Before we do that, a quick disclaimer though, this is not legal advice. It's for educational purposes only. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Brett Favre was an NFL quarterback who played for 20 seasons, most of which were spent at the Green Bay Packers. And he was quite impressive as somebody who watched him on TV as a child. Favre started 321 consecutive games and played through broken fingers and other injuries, small and large, earning him the reputation as NFL's Ironman. He retired in 2010 and was elected to the Football Hall of Fame in 2016. In 2022, however, a scandal involving Favre hit the news and spread all over the place. It was the largest welfare fraud scandal lawsuit in the history of the state of Mississippi, actually. The Mississippi Department of Human Services filed in connection with that scandal a civil lawsuit against Brett Favre, accusing him of accepting $1.1 million in state welfare money for speaking engagements and appearances that he never attended and never gave. Favre was never criminally prosecuted or charged with any kind of crime in connection with that, and he eventually paid back the $1.1 million that he received. Despite his efforts to clear his name from the welfare fraud scandal, many in the media were quick to condemn him based on the allegations alone, even though he has not been criminally charged, much less convicted by a jury of his peers of committing any kind of crime in connection with this incident. For example, Pat McAfee allegedly called Favre a thief who was stealing from poor people in Mississippi on his show and allegedly made similar remarks on Twitter. Here is a more recent clip of Pat McAfee's response to the lawsuit that Brett Favre filed against him for defamation.
How my lawyers are going to handle this? You know it. I ain't got them. So let's ride this. I'm excited to see how it goes. I'll see you in court, pal. Cheers to everybody, and cheers to Feel Good Friday not being ruined at all by that.
Cheers. With respect to Shannon Sharpe, on his show Undisputed, Sharpe called Favre a, quote, sorry mofo to steal from the lowest of the low, and said that Favre, quote, stole money from people that really needed that money, despite the fact that Favre, again, has not been charged with any crimes, much less convicted by a jury after a trial with evidence and all of that. These are just allegations at this point. Now let's take a look at the highlights from Favre's complaint against Mississippi State Auditor Shad White. So here we have the complaint, and if we look at the nature of the case, it states in paragraph 1 that Shad White, the state auditor of Mississippi, has carried out an outrageous media campaign of malicious and false accusations against Brett Favre, the Hall of Fame quarterback and native son of Mississippi, in a brazen attempt to leverage the media attention generated by Favre's celebrity to further his own political career. By shamelessly and falsely attacking Favre's good name, White has gained national media attention he previously could have only dreamed of, including appearances on television shows on CNN and HBO, a popular ESPN podcast, as well as interviews for print and online media. None of these national media outlets would have paid White the slightest attention had he not been attacking Favre. And then he goes on to take kind of a cheap shot at White by saying that his own wife was shocked about his appearance on the ESPN Daily podcast. In his media appearances, White has made statements accusing Favre of stealing taxpayer funds and misusing funds that were designed to serve poor folks. Then it says in paragraph 4, before filing this complaint, Favre sent defendant White a letter demanding that White retract and apologize for his defamatory statements and cease and desist from making further defamatory falsehoods against Favre. White has failed and refused to do so. Now, in paragraph 6, it says that he has accused Favre of committing serious crimes, and that is, legally speaking, defamation per se, meaning the thing speaks for itself. That is defamatory if you accuse somebody of a serious crime that they, in fact, did not commit or have not committed. Then in paragraph 15, he says in 2020 and 2021, after learning for the first time that a nonprofit for whom he had agreed to do publicity work may have improperly paid him with government funds, Favre voluntarily repaid all the funds. In May 2020, White, through his Office of the State Auditor, issued the following statement, basically a statement applauding Favre for paying the money back once he learned that it was misappropriated government welfare funds. But then in paragraph 6, it says, White, without any basis, reversed course a year later, seeking press attention for his forthcoming re-election campaign. Then in paragraph 19, it says, on September 15, 2020, during an interview with CNN's Kate Bolden, White falsely accused Favre of serious crimes, stating, quote, we know that Mr. Favre not only knew that he was receiving money from this nonprofit, which was funded by taxpayer dollars, we know that the funding for that was a sham, and we know that he knows that too. And I think this last part, we know that he knows that that is what makes this potentially defamatory if that is not in fact true, because Favre denied having knowledge that the funds had been misappropriated from the welfare funds of the state of Mississippi. In any case, 2 weeks later, it says in paragraph 21, White, in an interview on the ESPN Daily podcast listened to by approximately 70,000 people, repeated these false claims, stating that Favre knew that the money was flowing through a nonprofit which was designed to serve poor folks, designed to serve a public interest. White, during an interview published online by the Christian news outlet World, accused Favre of stealing taxpayer funds and committing white-collar fraud. Here we have the cause of action section, and it contains the elements that you have to prove in order to prove defamation and defamation per se. You have to show publication, that the statements were published to third parties. Here, that the third parties would be entire audience of viewers who saw Shannon Sharpe make the statements or White make these statements on CNN and ESPN. The statements were false and that they were made with actual malice or with knowledge of the falsity, or at a minimum with reckless disregard for the falsity or truth of those statements. In addition, Favre must show that his reputation has been injured by this and exposed him to public hatred, animus, contempt, or ridicule, degraded him in society, lessened him in public esteem, or lowered him in the confidence of the community. So I think it's safe to say that he has suffered a blow to his reputation as a result of these statements. For example, there was a news article that labeled him the scumbag of 2022 or something of that nature. And so that clearly would be evidence of that. If you watch Shannon Sharpe's commentary about it, Sharpe very harshly criticizes him and talks in a very condemning, contemptuous way about Favre on the show. I think the harm is clear. The real question and issue in this case is the statement that he committed serious crimes, is that false? And then the other key element in this case that is going to be the major point of dispute would be whether or not the White knew or recklessly disregarded whether or not Favre had actually committed a crime here. There are a few defenses, though, that White may use that we'll get into in a second. Briefly looking at the damages section, these paragraphs state that Favre is seeking various forms of damages, including the nominal and general damages. That would be like loss of contracts due to the reputational hit that he has taken from being involved in this. He can show that before all of this was said about me in public, I was making this amount of money for public appearances and speaking engagements and endorsements and all of that. And then after all of that dried up because of the accusations of committing serious crimes against me. And so in addition to that, if he can show actual malice or specific intent to cause injury, or these conscious indifference to his welfare, et cetera, then Favre can also recover punitive damages, which are designed to punish White if, in fact, he was doing this maliciously and intentionally to hurt Brett Favre, or was just recklessly disregarding the facts surrounding it. And then finally, in paragraph 38, this is not required, but Favre is clearly going out of his way to let people know that he is not seeking the payment of any taxpayer money from the state of Mississippi. He is seeking damages from the individual people that he has sued here, including White, McAfee, and Sharpe. So now let's talk about some of the defenses to a defamation claim. The first major defense that you often see in a defamation case is truth. If a statement is true, then truth is an absolute defense to defamation because there is no prohibition against speaking the truth. So here, if Favre did in fact commit a crime and he's ultimately charged and convicted of some sort of crime in connection to the welfare fraud scandal, then White would be absolved of any kind of civil liability in the defamation case. White could raise that as an affirmative defense and say, look, what I said was true. We proved it in a court of law. Therefore, you can't sue me for defamation. I was just telling the truth. Some other defenses that White could, in theory, raise are statements made in connection with judicial proceedings, statements related to the public interest, statements relating to carrying out justice. Now, if you make a statement that's related to a judicial proceeding, like you accuse somebody of something that's false and you know it's false, but you do it in a pleading, meaning a court filing, then it is immune from a defamation claim. Now, I don't understand the policy behind that, and I don't like it as somebody who has seen a lot of slanderous, libelous statements in court pleadings. I see that abused a lot where people will slander somebody in a court pleading and they're immune from any kind of recourse for that because of this law of immunity for judicial proceedings. But if you say something in the course of a judicial proceeding, that's a lawsuit or in a pleading, a complaint of that sort filed with a court, then in general, that cannot form the basis of a defamation claim. You can't sue somebody for libeling you in a court document. On top of that, if you make a statement in Mississippi that is in the public's interest, whatever that means, I don't know how the courts have defined that, but if you do that, that is an affirmative defense. It immunizes where your statement is. How you could be making a statement that's in the public's interest, even though you know it to be false, I don't know. I don't even know how that would operate. But if there are any lawyers in Mississippi watching this, leave a comment explaining how a statement in the public's interest could be immune from defamation, even if the person making the statement knows that it's a false statement. And then finally, carrying out justice. That's also a very general catch-all affirmative defense that we might see here. Do you believe the accusations against Brett Favre are true? If not, do you feel like Favre's reputation has been harmed because of the accusations against him? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, as always, thank you for watching.